Deborah Henderson is the manager at Clayton's Farmers Market, a privately owned market in Missouri. When Deborah assumed the position, she was very excited. She was working for this little nonprofit that sought the prosperity of farmers. However, she very quickly realized the reality of the situation. Farmers were getting charged hundreds of thousands of dollars just to sell at her market. So Deborah took matters into her own hands. Instead of standing idly by, she decided to go talk in front of her city council in order to try to get a repressive bill that larger grocery chains were trying to pass that would repress smaller farmers dissolved. In the end, she wasn't able to get this fully removed. However, in the end, she was able to put caps on the amount that these counties could charge for farmers' permits and fees. And this is still a very noteworthy victory for the woman. And I think smaller action can happen here in Orange County, where the trend in fees and permits is actually on the rise. There are many barriers into the food industry for smaller farmers, home sellers, and vendors. Not only do they have to pay for compliance costs at the federal level, they also have to pay a lot of money in permits and in fees just to be able to sell. Cheaper permits would, if action is taken, it would result in lower costs for the consumer, a more diverse food industry, a community here in Orange County, and it would result in safer food from online sellers. The cheaper permits would mean that sellers wouldn't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, meaning that your food would be cheaper. This would also mean that home sellers would be more likely to buy permits if they weren't so expensive. Her proposal passed years ago, but other parts of the country still haven't followed suit. And I wonder why. So why can't we try to halt the rising costs here in Orange County? Due to the high costs to keep up with safety regulations, small vendors and local farmers should receive reduced costs on certification, permit fees, and space at local farmers markets, as well as for home-based sellers. First, I will discuss the challenges sellers experience in compliance with food safety and with fees and permits. Then I will discuss the causes of these financial barriers, and finally, I will present my own solutions. First, let's outline the problems. Local farmers markets struggle with profitability. Local vendors and farmers markets are very expensive to attend. They have to pay for the ingredients to prepare the food, the equipment, the transportation, the labor, the insurance, and on top of this, they also have to pay for the fees to even get into the markets, the permits, and the certifications. The problem isn't just getting the permission to sell, it's the cost of all of this. So from Danny Montre's 2012 dissertation, a farmer explained, "I don't think we're going to go again because it wasn't very profitable. Unless we can break even, we can't even afford to go." This really shows how much it costs for these farmers to get out there before that even gets money into their own hands. This is just to be able to present themselves at a market. This can mean that they could spend all this time, money, and effort to get to these farmers markets and not even make a single dime that day. And from Michael Jacobs' 2001 article, The Burdens of Food Regulations for Small Business, he explains that food regulations, even though they are great for improving safety, they create a lot of additional costs for smaller businesses, which can be very burdensome. Quote, "All these measures, which no doubt improve safety, imply extra costs for primary food producing businesses." Another problem is that home-based sellers struggle to enter the legal food market. The cottage food operation is a certification or a permit you have to get in order to sell food from home. And this can be something that not a whole lot of people even know about. It's costly, and the Orange County Healthcare Agency's cottage food operation allows for home-based sellers to sell specific foods. And Kay Kane's 2026 article from the Almanac, "The Inside Face of Marketplace's Thriving and Largely Unregulated Foods Business," he explains and examines how online food is highly unregulated, highly unsafe, and highly expensive. One of the causes of this is that food safety compliance requires funding and resources. The costs are so high because to pay for a food inspector, a health inspector, to pay for the tracing of these issues, like the Taco Bell incident, that costs a lot of money to be able to trace all that. And having these regulations in place are very beneficial for situations like that. And these happen very often. The reason there aren't health outbreaks every other day is because of the FDA. It's because of the FSIS. And they're very important to us, and they're very costly. These permits and these regulations are there in order to keep those things running. So removal of it isn't really a good idea. The Orange County Healthcare Agency explains that food facility permits support regulatory oversight on inspection services. It's very important. And from a 2026 article published in Urban Science, they found that research supports the idea that safety practices are important for long-term business sustainability. So these actually benefit us in the long term. Another cause of these problems is that smaller sellers face barriers when navigating the permit system. It's a very lengthy process that not a whole lot of people know about. Your neighbor who's selling cakes out of her garage probably doesn't know that she needs to spend hundreds of dollars and take hours of courses in order to obtain a permit in order to sell that. And from the Kay Keynes 2026, the Almanac, an article titled Inside Facebook Marketplace's Thriving and Largely Unregulated Food Business, she explains that if the process was simpler and more effective, it could encourage more sellers to become permitted. So since it is so complicated and expensive and lengthy and largely unknown, it causes food to be a little bit more unsafe. And since some people are going through the process to get these certifications, it becomes unfair because some people are just selling without any of these resources. So some people go through the safety trainings, spend the money to buy the correct things to make sure the food is safe. Others are just cooking out of their kitchen, right? So some solutions that we thought of were that it would reduce that. Solution 1. We can reduce costs while maintaining food safety. So we can do this by going through Orange County, and we can actually go through them and try to create a process that would reduce permit fees for qualifying vendors. You could go by year, you could go by size of business. You can do this by many different ways. I would prefer size of business. So smaller businesses, say less than a certain threshold of customers, would receive less cost to renew their certification, to obtain their certification. Since something like a grocery store, which has millions of consumers every year, their certifications, their permits cost $500. Someone who is selling, again, cakes out of their garage would also spend $500 on the same exact thing. So lower barriers into it could be very beneficial to diversifying our market. You would bring this proposal before the Orange County Board of Supervisors. You would work with the Orange County Healthcare Industry, the agency, the Orange County Agricultural Commissioner, and you would review existing permit costs to create and determine new permit costs. And you could fund this using the billions of dollars that Orange County gets. We have about a $5 billion budget, I think, every year, and this could be a very small amount of it that is very beneficial to us as a whole. So, while food regulations are necessary to consumers because we deserve safe food, smaller vendors shouldn't have to choose between following safety rules or completely disregarding them to make a profit. So by reducing these unnecessary financial barriers, Orange County can create a very diverse and flourishing marketplace that's cheaper for all of us. The goal isn't just fewer regulations, it's to create a system where it's fair for everyone.